Okay, so today we're going to be looking at The Way My Mother Speaks. So as you'll see, you have a copy of the annotated poem in front of you. The starting point, as with all of the poems, is to start at the very beginning, and it's to start at the part of the poem that a lot of candidates actually neglect, and it's a particularly important part of the poem. Poets spend a very long time thinking very carefully about the title of their poems, and they do that for a reason, because they're important. So it is important to us that today we spend a little bit of time looking at the purpose and the function of that title, and that's something that we'll be doing as we look across all of the poems. So today's poem is entitled The Way My Mother Speaks, and the function, the purpose of that title is to identify the subject of the poem. So the poem is about reflecting on the developing relationship between Duffy and her mother. So the purpose is to identify the subject of the poem. You will require a quote bank for the Scottish Literature part of the exam that will have a number of quotations on it, but please remember on top of your quote bank that the titles of the poems can also be used as quotation evidence. So don't forget about them as an additional extra. Let's have a look at stanza one. So the opening sentence reads, I say her phrase to myself in my head or under the shallow of my breath, restful shapes moving. So if we look specifically at the phrase in my head, this reflects the private nature of the act of repeating her mother's words. Duffy does this as a kind of comforting nostalgia type exercise when she's on the train. And it's important that you recognise that the importance of the mother's words are about comfort and they are about nostalgia, and it's about going back to that particular point in her life. So important words to have at the forefront of your mind when you think about this poem. One of them would certainly be nostalgia, and the fact that she does this privately shows you the important private nature of her mother's words to her. That's reinforced by the use of the word shallow, which has connotations of quietly, discreetly, unnoticed. And again, this is just to try and reinforce the private and intimate nature of what she's actually doing, thinking about her mother. The metaphor where the words themselves are described as restful shapes moving. The memory of Duffy's mother's word is being compared to restful shapes that move. Now you have to look at that image in its three parts, because you have the three comparisons. The words are being compared to something that's restful, they're being compared to something that is a shape, and they're being compared to something that is actually moving. So if we look at this idea of them being restful, this would suggest a relaxation, a comfort. The idea that they are shapes means that they actually go beyond words, and that the importance extends beyond the written word. They actually have a shape of their very own, and the comparison with this idea of moving is the suggestion of life and living, that the words again are so important that they actually have a life of their own. All of this reinforces this sense that the words are significant, they're important, they're comforting, and they're private. So what are the words that are spoken by Duffy's mother? The day and ever, the day and ever. So we have two short sentences which are obviously repetition, so they're a repeat of each other. They are italicised, and the reason why Duffy uses italics in this poem is to mark direct speech. So in case we were unsure about who these words belong to, these are the words of Duffy's mother. So there is a separate narrative voice here that we're hearing. This is Duffy's mother's voice that we hear. These are quite distinctive phrases, the day and ever, perhaps not phrases that are commonly used. It means today and always in essence, and it captures, I think, the essence of Duffy's mother. And that's how she remembers her, with these quirky, slightly different phrases. And therefore Duffy thinks on her in terms of a form of nostalgia. Nostalgia being looking back fondly and with positive memories. The train this slow evening goes down England, browsing the right sky, two blue swapped for a cool grey. This is actually quite a complex image. So if we start if we take, for example, the metaphor, this slow evening, so the train, this slow evening, the progress of time is being compared to something that is slow. The similarity is found in both the relaxation and the boredom generated. So if something goes very slowly, it can be a reflection of the fact that you're relaxed and at ease, or it could be more of a reflection of the fact that you're bored. So this emphasises that Duffy's feeling relaxed whilst on the train, and it is when she has time for contemplation that she's able to consider her mother by thinking about her speech. So in essence, the words that her mother speaks are a symbol of her character. And I think that's our key to understanding. The way my mother speaks, linking back to the title, is a symbol of her mother's character. And it's about understanding the connections between the two. So when she wants to connect with her mother or her mother's character, she thinks of the words that are spoken by her. The journey that Duffy undertakes on this train is a literal and a metaphorical journey. So literally she is sitting on a train and she's travelling down England. However, there's also a metaphorical journey, which is about the journey from childhood to adolescence, from dependence to independence, and from seeing herself as being closely tied to her mother to then forming her own identity. And this idea of a transition from childhood to adulthood, you'll see, is a common theme that crosses the other two poems that I've placed into this group. So there's a clear parallel with in Mrs. Tilcher's Class, and originally. All three of those poems reflect on that transition between childhood and adulthood. So if you were to get an extract from one of those poems in the final exam, that's one of the things that would connect for your 8-mark question at the end. That is one of the things that would connect this poem or these poems together, and you would be able to obviously make the link from there. If we look to the word choice of browsing, browsing has connotations of something without a defined purpose. It's not being rushed, and again, it's all contributing to this idea of relaxation. So we have Duffy undertaking a journey, and we get a strong sense that it is relaxed, and it's that relaxation and that time that is giving her the opportunity to think and reconnect with her mother, which she does by remembering the words that she speaks. When we look to what happens to the sky shifts from being too blue to be swapped for a cool grey. What we actually have here is colour symbolism. So those colours are being used symbolically. So literally, this marks the movement from the afternoon to early evening. So the sky's gone from being blue to becoming a cool grey. So there's potentially a shift in time. But it may also act as pathetic fallacy, which represents the change in her mood. In the sense that because she's thinking about her mum and she's trying to connect with her mum's character, she becomes sad, and there's kind of this sense of her being homesick. So the positivity of the blue sky, if we think about it in terms of pathetic fallacy, and then it becomes grey, would suggest that shift in mood, that perhaps she's becoming a little bit homesick. For miles I have been saying, what like is it? The way I say things when I think. So the word choice on miles, I think, is particularly poignant here because it tells us that this is a journey of length, that she has been given an amount of a length of time to contemplate. This is not a short journey, hence why she has this opportunity, this chance to think about things. What like is it is also italicised. So again, this is a mark of direct speech, and the speaker for these italicised words are the same as the last, that they are Duffy's mother. What does it mean? What like is it? I interpret what like is it as meaning that an action is unbelievable or odd. So if somebody does something that's particularly bizarre, you might say, oh, Ewan, what's he like? Well, this is a kind of adaptation, similar type play on that concept. So what like is it? It's about making the remark, the comment that something is unbelievable, or perhaps it's just odd or different. And this is obviously a phrase that was used by Duffy's mother.